This is an open letter to Uncle Sam. Love you, Uncle. Here's the thing, Uncle Sam. I want to talk about hate speech. It seems nowadays anybody who wields power, who holds power, can accuse anybody else of hate speech. Anybody they don't agree with their they don't agree with their view can say, oh, this is hate speech and that is hate speech, and the others say. I've seen this multiple times and multiple examples that it seems like you cannot criticize any group of people, you cannot criticize any group of people. You cannot even bring to light deficiencies, or you cannot question any group of people, unless you can. But if the system doesn't agree with you questioning that specific group, the system is going to tag you as a hate speech, tag your whatever you say as hate speech. But if the system agrees with you, the people in power agree with you questioning a specific group of people, then you're good. It's not a hate speech. Then the system just let it slide. Why do I say this? Example. When the media is given their marching order, when the media is given their marching order to call a group of people on the other side of the planet as terrorists, they do call them terrorists. A group of people on the other side of the planet, they do call them terrorists, and they get away with it because apparently calling another group of people on the other side of the planet, which the system doesn't agree with, calling them terrorists is perfectly fine, and that is not considered a hate speech. How is that possible? If you don't like them, you don't agree with them, then you tell the media that these folks are terrorists, and the media goes ahead and calls them terrorists. If you have an argument with them, or if you have a war with them, or if you have a fight with them, or if you have a police action with them, they're the terrorists, and the media is informed from this point on, you should call them terrorists, them, whoever that them might be. Some of them are in Africa, some of them are in Asia, some of them are in South America, and they all have different, they're all from different backgrounds. I mean, not only Trump designated the whole fucking Iranian military system as terrorists, but he was wondering if he can start calling the tagging Venezuelans as terrorists. And Cubans are, some Republicans that say let's call Cubans are also terrorists. Isn't this hate speech? Can I just, since if I sit in a powerful seat, can I wake up in the morning and see who I don't like and just pull it out of my ass and call them, okay, here, I just pull it out of my ass, and here is your terrorist. From today you're terrorist, and from today you're terrorist, and from today you're terrorist. Doesn't that qualify as hate speech? I mean, what is the evidence, and are they, who are they terrorizing, and are they within their own boundaries, or are they in your boundaries? Are they within their own borders, internationally recognize their borders, or are they in your internationally recognized borders? And you know, this whole idea of who gets to designate others as bad people, and just designating others as bad people, wouldn't that qualify as hate speech? Uncle Sam, I love you, man. The reason I bring this up is because recently one of my videos was tagged by YouTube as hate speech. Now this video was about 9/11. It didn't have much views. It had only 17 views, but it was tagged as hate speech. And I have to watch that video again, but of course I can't watch it on YouTube because YouTube has blocked it. But first of all, in the title of the video, I said I might be wrong. It says 9/11, and it says I might be wrong. So I based the assumption of that here is what I have noticed. Here is what I have researched. Now I could be wrong. This is what it seems has happened to me, but I could be wrong. And just today I saw that it seems Facebook has pulled down that video and said, no, this qualifies as hate speech. Now I have to go and watch it again on my own computer, but from what I remember in that video, all I said was this. The main topics were this. One, I don't think, yes, the group of Arabs who did it, they were from Saudi Arabia. They weren't from Iraq. They weren't Afghanis. They weren't Iraqis. They were Saudi Arabians. 15 of the 19 were Saudi Arabians, and it seems there is, if there is anybody has any grievance with Uncle Sam, it's the Saudi Arabians. And how that can be possible if Saudi Arabia is at the same time considered as an ally for the past 100 years. Saudi Arabia has been an ally, and then its citizens attack Uncle Sam. That's a little odd. That's one point I made. The second point I made was, it seemed that the buildings that were involved in 9/11, they were the beams were pre-cut by termite, and because the fact is that European engineers have done the calculations and have published the paper that you can find online, that the European Association of Engineers, a very well-known body, well-recognized body, has published a paper stating that there is no fucking way two buildings could have come down with just planes hitting them, and much less the third building, the 9-story third building that came down without any planes touching it. And the Europeans have questioned it. So it seemed to me, I could be wrong again, but it seemed to me that these Arabs with their planes could not have brought the whole thing down. It seemed to me there were some insiders who had done something to the building, you know, that included, you know, termites, and which, you know, were the actual cause of buildings coming down. So basically it was intentionally, the buildings were intentionally rigged to come down, and the planes were just a, you know, but just basically was a cover. The planes hitting the building was a cover. Now what part of this is hate speech, I don't understand. I'm just, and it's not just me saying this. I noticed these because I watched a lot of documentaries regarding this matter on YouTube itself. I watched documentaries which basically brought to light a lot of, you know, anomalies in what happened in 9/11. And all this said, I am being accused of hate speech by YouTube. I'm sorry. The reality is, apparently the executive branch of US government refused to investigate 9/11, although many in a House of Representatives wanted to investigate 9/11 and find out exactly what happened. The executive power steadfastly refused to investigate. And now these private individuals with these documentaries and those research groups in Europe, they all have to try to piece together the puzzle, because those guys who were in charge didn't want to investigate anything, and now everybody has to try to piece together a puzzle, which it wouldn't have been necessary if the whole thing was investigated. I mean, when one man is killed, murdered, police and the FBI and everybody gets involved and investigates that one man was murdered. Now 2 buildings in the biggest city in the world come down, 3 buildings in the biggest city of the world comes down, and there's no investigation necessary, and they, apparently they cleaned up all the debris as soon as they could, send the metal to China to be smelted, and that's it. We already know who's responsible. It's sort of like it took them like a day or 2 days to point the finger at that fucking guy, Saudi Arabian guy, Bin Laden. It took them like 2 days. No investigation necessary. Then why do you have the FBI? Why do you have the CIA? Why do you have all these police departments? Why do you have all those detectives? How many of them went on the site and researched the site of the horrendous act? Now, I said all these in a lengthier format in my videos, and YouTube is accusing me of hate speech. I said, yeah, I did say Arabs were, to me, from what I've seen, Arabs are incompetent of carrying out 9/11 by themselves. First of all, there is research paper shows that those buildings couldn't have come down with just the planes hitting them. Second of all, I say Arabs are incompetent of carrying out that act, because I've seen them. I see the system. I've read the news. I read the news. I've seen them in their country. I haven't seen them in their countries, but I've seen how they're running their business. Arabs are not running their business. East Asians and Europeans, the pink skins and the yellow skins, are running shit in the Arabian Peninsula. All of the Arabian Peninsula. Arabs are not really, on top of their game. And this is not a hate speech. This is just fucking facts. They don't have Einsteins in the Arabian Peninsula. They don't have von Braun in the Arabian Peninsula. They don't have Marie Curie in the Arabian Peninsula. Arabian Peninsula. I'm just, expanding it. It's not even Saudi Arabia. The whole fucking Arabian Peninsula, they just don't have, very intelligent people. Historically, never had very intelligent people. And right now, their shit is being run by the pink skins and the yellow skins. So this is not a hate speech. This is just admission of facts. It's a fact that people living on Arabian Peninsula are not running Arabian Peninsula, but they hire pink skins and the yellow skin to come and run their country. This is a fact. This is not a hate speech, it's a fact. You can look at the statistics and find out that yes, there are so many there are foreigners in the Arabian Peninsula taking care of, high-level intellectual jobs, and there are low-skilled foreigners in Arabian Peninsula taking care of the manual labor jobs, and the Arabs are just there, you know, holding their deck. And that's just fact. You don't see Arabs making any, you know, they haven't made Mercedes-Benz equivalent to Mercedes-Benz in their history. They haven't made or are not making, and nobody, you know, is waiting for them to produce an equivalent to Toyota or Honda in Arabian Peninsula. They haven't built anything, they haven't made anything, they haven't done anything. There is no great research being done in Arabian Peninsula. That's not a hate speech, that's fact. But the mass media tagging Cubans as terrorists, that's hate speech. The media getting their marching order and tagging the Venezuelans as terrorists, that's hate speech. What the fuck? It seems you guys, this hate speech matter can be bent whenever, in whatever way the powerful, the people in charge want to bend it. The Afghans, those shitheads, the Taliban in their own shithole, they're trying to bring some kind of order. They're shitheads. But still, being shitheads, this is something that, you know, I agree with the system, so the system doesn't consider this as hate speech. But tagging them, for example, the moment the system cannot reach an agreement with Taliban, I'm sure they're going to tag Taliban as terrorists again. They were terrorists, then they came out of terrorist list, now they're back in terrorist list. Although Taliban haven't changed their behavior one iota. If you don't change your behavior, but you keep popping in and out of terrorist lists, that just basically tells you, you know, the whole thing is arbitrary. You can go into the list and come out of the list at the will of the people who, you know, have a big penis, hold a big stick. So, but just tagging different countries and different organizations as different people as terrorists, just tagging them, that's hate speech. What is your evidence? What is the evidence? And okay, if anybody fighting for their cause is a terrorist, then your allies who are fighting for their cause, they are terrorists to some other people. You know, they're terrorizing some other people. So your allies who are fighting for also their cause, whatever that cause may be, they're also, you know, attacking some other people who are, you know, not your allies, but your enemies, but they're also terrorizing those guys. So they can all be considered terrorists, but since they all can be considered terrorists, you know, two fighting factions are trying to, you know, terrorize each other, so one would back down. So either both fighting factions, in reality, both fighting factions can be considered as terrorists because they each are trying to terrorize the other one into submission. So either you call both sides terrorists, in which case one has to call themselves terrorists as well, because, you know, they're fighting a war with another, which is not a, you know, logical thing to do. So it's not logical to start tagging others as terrorists and bad guys. They have a cause, you have a cause, you're fighting each other. And, you know, in reality, neither cause is important enough to, you know, end in the shooting war. I don't think you humans understand on Earth that no cause is important enough to shoot other people for, especially in their own home. I mean, no cause is important enough for people to shoot each other for it, especially if, you know, it's in their own home. I mean, one side goes into the other side's home and shoots the guy, and, you know, that's the idea of the no-knock warrants that, you know, the police have been reprimanded, is because, you know, That's one of the things that caused the Black Lives Matter issue, is because it seemed that the police in Uncle Sam's land has been tagging, without the black people's knowledge, has been tagging black people as, yeah, terrorists and terrorists and terrorists. So you have to be very, you know, ready to shoot them in their own home if you know, think that they're terrorists, they're bad people, they're bad. So even if you shoot them in their own home, I guess that's good, because they're bad people to begin with. Folks, you cannot, my friends at YouTube, you cannot say if people like me, common jackass like me, if he questions a historical incidents and its origins, you cannot say that that's a hate speech. Many people, after the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which started the Vietnam War, questioned the Gulf of Tonkin incident for decades after that, until and every time the system says no such thing, there was no such thing, Gulf of Tonkin was absolute truth. And then 50 years later it came out that, yeah, Gulf of Tonkin was a made-up incident that resulted into, you know, many lives lost. So, and which again, 9/11 incident, which has resulted to many lives lost, a lot of destruction on your planet. But the whole idea that it's a hate speech to question 9/11, question the origins of 9/11, question the validity of finger pointing on 9/11, question the people behind on it, investigating a proper investigation on 9/11. If somebody asks for that and says, yeah, based on my own experience, the Arabs are not competent enough to pull out 9/11 by their own, that's not a hate speech. That's just admission of facts. I see Arabs are not competent enough to run their own shit. That's not a hate speech. Hate speech based on what? The mass media gets to, you know, hatefully tag anybody they like as terrorists and bad guys and person of, you know, bad people. Tag them, tag a whole group of people, a whole, you know, organizations, and that's not hate speech. Fox News on the daily basis is, you know, promoting hate speech. It's just Fox News. You cannot watch Fox News for 5 minutes and not hear, you know, hate speech towards 50 different groups and minorities and nationalities and whatever. That's okay. And that's just one of Newsmax and Newsmin and News this and News that. Anybody you listen to in the mass media is constantly promoting this narrative that these guys are bad and those guys are bad and the other guys are bad, these guys are bad. That's not hate speech. Somali terrorists. Okay. Why? It boggles the mind that it's sort of like, okay, we have the right to call our enemy whatever we want, or perceived enemy whatever we want, and that is not considered hate speech. I mean, who are we? Who determines what is acceptable or not. Because, I mean, is it the top executive seat? Then is it the top executive seat? Then that's dictatorship. I mean, right before President Trump comes into office, some groups were not on the terrorist list, and as soon as President Trump went to office, those groups, whatever, went into the terrorist list, and some groups that were on the terrorist list came out of the terrorist list. Is it just that arbitrary? And then the news media gets to change their narrative that, okay, from today, these guys are terrorists and those guys are not terrorists, and we're good to go. And just pulling this terrorist designation out of people's asses, is not considered hate speech. But me saying that, you know, Arabs, I don't think, I've never noticed Arabs could be, you know, capable of pulling such a sophisticated job as 9/11. It was a horrendous job, but it was a sophisticated job. Those buildings should not have come down just because 2 planes hit them. That's not me saying, that's European Association of Engineers have published a paper and done a study on it, and said those buildings could not have come down just with the action of those planes. That's not a hate speech. That's a research paper. That's referring to a research paper. What part of that is hate speech? YouTube. Either we are allowed free speech or we are not allowed free speech. If you allow free speech, and if by my own observation, if anybody by their own observation believes that such a group of people are intelligent, that person is allowed to say they're intelligent. If he believes that group of people are not intelligent, is allowed to say they're not intelligent. That's not hate speech, that's observation. If somebody says, I don't think that incident, the cause of that incident was not this, it might have other causes as well, that's not hate speech. That's observation and you know, investigation. If one says that, okay, the pink skins from this side of the world went over there to the brown skin land and fucked things up and sent it back to the Stone Age in Fallujah, that's not hate speech. That's just, you know, expression of the facts. The pink skins from Northern Hemisphere went to the middle of this, you know, this planet where the brown skin lived and smashed them. Smashed an area of the land which had nothing to do with 9/11, Iraq and Afghanistan. None of these 2 pieces of land and the inhabitants of these 2 pieces of land, Iraq and Afghanistan, had nothing to do with 9/11. But many died. Inhabitants of those 2 pieces of land in Iraq and Afghanistan, many of them died, and neither of those 2 pieces of land had anything to do with 9/11. There were some people from somewhere else who were living over here on temporary basis, so because of that, these, you know, 2 big pieces of geography, Iraq and Afghanistan, were smashed to bits again. The old colonies of the British were, you know, recolonized again, smashed to bits. That's not a hate speech. That's just the expression of facts. Iraqis were not involved in 9/11. Not a single Iraqi was not involved in 9/11. Not even in that 19 people who carried out 9/11, there wasn't a single Iraqi or Afghani. But they paid the price for something they didn't do. That's not a hate speech. That's just, stating the facts. Are you fucking kidding me? And why this was allowed to happen? Just because we why? Apparently nobody's supposed to question, or else they're in trouble. No one's supposed to question. Because everybody's bad except us, except me. I'm from Mars. I'm an alien, but everybody is bad except. I mean, if everybody in the world goes forward in their life, in their quest, and saying that we are good, our allies are good, and everybody else is bad. And if you agree with me, you're my ally, and if you don't agree with me, you're my enemy and you're bad. And guess what? You're a terrorist from tomorrow. That's not hate speech. That's not, causing a war, which is a hateful act, is not bad, is acceptable. Mr. George W. Bush can go and start a war anywhere he wants. A hateful act such as a war. A hateful act is okay, but questioning that hateful act is hate speech? Are you fucking kidding me? A hateful act is not bad, but questioning a hateful act is a hate speech. I'm sorry. The empire of the good has to be really empire of the good. Everybody can, through history we have empires. It's just empires have to try to stay within, by just saying that we are good. I remember Mr. Pompeo once said in a speech that we are good, we have always been good, we are the good guys. It was over something, I don't know. It was the middle of his speech that he was emphasizing that we are good. No, you're not good just because you say you're good. Your actions determine whether you're good or bad. If your actions are logical and more people benefit from your actions, then what's the opposite of benefit? If more people win more people benefit from your actions, then you're good. But if more people lose from your action, then I don't think you can consider yourself bad. You can't consider yourself as good. 250,000 at least. The statistics is out there. At least 250 Afghanis died, while not a single Afghan was involved in 9/11. At least 500,000 Iraqis died, while not a single one of the participants of 9/11 were from Iraq. But 15 of the 19 people involved in 9/11 were Saudis, and Saudi Arabia didn't suffer a thing. And then there's evidence that there were others involved in 9/11, which was the actual cause of the buildings coming down, but that was not investigated either. So the people behind the scene were not investigated. The Saudis who were in front of the scene were not blamed but two perfectly, you know, two different areas on planet Earth with their own population and their own geography, they were smashed to pieces because of 9/11, while none of their citizens or their governments were involved in 9/11. I mean, how do you justify that? But then, yeah, right, go ahead, take my video off the site, because, you know, and I call it hate speech just because I'm confused. I don't understand. How can one group of people commit an act and another group of people probably were behind this act, behind the scenes, but then two perfectly, you know, strangers be blamed for such an act? Wasn't this, you know, previously known in Uncle Sam's land as lynching? Literally, Iraq and Afghanistan were lynched. You know, the whole idea of lynching was when a white woman would accuse somebody would rape a white woman or have sex with a white woman, and the white woman say, oh, it was those guys, and suddenly a couple of black guys go up in flames, or, you know, start hanging from a rope, lynched, although they were usually they were perfectly innocent. They just wanted, the mob needed to blame somebody. Again, the mob needed to blame somebody for 9/11. So let's blame the Afghans, and let's blame the Iraqis, and let's go smash them to pieces. Are you fucking kidding me? Folks, here's the thing, folks at the YouTube, fuck you. Here's the thing. Iraqi people are one of the oldest civilizations on earth. Oldest. You cannot, in a normal world, running a normal planet, you should not have a great military power going in and smashing one of the oldest civilizations. Instead of cherishing them, you have smashed them to little pieces, broken their spirit, broken their back, broken them physically, broken them in every way possible. Why? Is this a hate speech? There was no reason to break Iraq. There was never any reason for Iraqis to go under sanction. It's one of the oldest civilizations on earth. Why should its people suffer? It's one of the fucking oldest civilizations on earth. Why should its people suffer through sanctions and embargoes for 20, 30 years, and then war for another 20 years? Do we hate ourselves as human beings? I'm an alien. Do you hate yourself as a human being that you want to go and smash your own on the other side of the planet in the name of freedom? Fuck you. This is not hate speech. This is a statement of facts. Or the Iranians. It's one of the oldest next door. These two countries used to be one. It's the same fucking area. Again, one of the oldest civilizations on earth. When people came out of Africa, evolved out of Africa, the first stop was by the Mediterranean, where Israel is. But the second stop was the Middle East, between those two fucking rivers. In that area. Iraq, Iran. So you're embargoing them, you're sanctioning the people who are the remnants of the oldest civilizations on earth, instead of cherishing them. We're going to embargo you, and we're going to sanction you, and we're going to make you suffer. Why? Because you're not dancing to our tune? Because we have invented democracy and you're not following us. And you're not copying us. We have invented democracy, but you're not copying us. Democracy doesn't work for everybody. Not all societies can be run in an orderly fashion with a form of government called democracies. Some societies, some more historically, some societies with more historical baggage cannot be run with democracies. They need other forms of government in order to create order. The objective in this world is order. So you go smash the order to bring them a different order that has worked for you but is not work. It will never work for them. I mean, the empire is going about running the planet in a very nonsensical manner, in a very unwise manner, based on short-term goals and short-term profits. And questioning this is hate speech. Your allies, Uncle Sam, your managers have allies in the Middle East from the most primitive. Your managers' allies, Uncle Sam, your managers, the one who are running your business, their allies in the Middle East are one of the most primitive populations of the Middle East, and that is the Arabs of the periphery of on the periphery of the Arabian Peninsula. This is fact. This is not historic. This is not hate speech. The periphery of Arabian Peninsula was a harsh environment. Environment. Hot, humid, no trees, no grass, nothing green. Very harsh environment. This is a fact. People who put up with a harsh environment, who live in a harsh environment, they're very stubborn and primitive people. More smarter people move to a better area, move to, greener pastures. Very primitive, stubborn people stay in a fucked up, harsh environment, like the periphery of the Arabian Peninsula. This is not hate speech, this is fact. So Uncle Sam, your managers, their allies in the Middle East are the most primitive, stubborn, hard-headed people around the periphery of the Arabian Peninsula. Primitive. And they're primitive. This is again facts. They chop people's heads off on Fridays after prayers. The guilties, they chop the guilty's head off with a sword in front of crowds, as if like they're killing, they're killing chicken. And people watch as the blood squirts out from a human being. This is Arabian Peninsula. This is not hate speech, this is fact. But calling the Venezuelans terrorists is hate speech. Calling the Cubans terrorists because you don't like their form of government is hate speech. Calling the Arabs primitive is not hate speech because they are. This is, you see. Your allies in the Middle East are the most primitive. But the most cultured people in the Middle East, which are those areas that were sitting on the Silk Road. Because the Silk Road, it was the road for exchange of goods, services, and ideas. Those areas of Asia that are sitting on the Silk Road are the most advanced, culturally, intellectually the most advanced. Those people are all your enemies. I guess you consider them enemies. Iraq, Afghanistan, Iran, those are the enemies. These who are, you know, the most advanced, at least they're most advanced comparing to their fucking neighbors in Arabian Peninsula. It's all neighborhood, you know, being forward thinking and being backward thinking is all relative. Yes, in the Middle East, as compared to the Arabs in the Arabian Peninsula, the Arabs in Iraq and the Persians, these are much more advanced than the Arabs on the periphery of Arabian Peninsula. So those Arabs, the primitive ones, are allies, and they attack on 9/11. Their citizens attack on 9/11, but for some reason, you know, Uncle Sam, for some reason your managers didn't want to investigate it, didn't want to know about it, didn't want to recognize that those people were from Saudi Arabia, and they started blaming the Afghans, the Iranians, and the Iraqis for 9/11. What the fuck is this? And nobody questions it. And if they do question it, it's a hate speech? Fuck you. Hate speech comes out of Fox. Hate speech comes out of Newsmax. Hate speech comes out of most of the media, especially right-wing media around the world. Even the left-wing media, MSNBC also, you know, goes along with calling, you know, these guys terrorists and those guys terrorists and these guys bad guys and those are bad guys and everybody who's not us is bad. That's hate speech. I don't think anybody is bad. I don't think Arabs are bad people. I think they're stupid, but that doesn't make them bad. I don't think Jewish people are bad people. They're good people. I think they're smart, but they're not bad. Nothing is bad or good. It's just people are people. Their actions, when they benefits you, you think they're good people, and if their action doesn't benefit you, you think they're bad people. But that's your mind. That's in your mind. There are no terrorists. There are no good guys. There are no bad guys. It's all in your mind. Those people who you benefit from, you think they're good people. Those people you don't benefit from, you think they're bad people. But in reality, there are no good people or bad people. And, you know, fighting people who, you know, trying to protect their own interests is, you know, it's not, you know, it's not good. Everybody has the right to exist on this planet. It's not enough that we, you know, take over nature and execute animals to eat them. Now we have to continue executing other human beings just because their interest overrides our interest. That's bad. That's hate. Going and smashing Iraq and Afghanistan into a million pieces, while in actual fact neither one had anything to do with the bad thing that happened in 9/11. That's bad. That's hateful. You accuse me of hate speech? 500,000 Iraqis are dead. while neither them nor their government were involved in any act associated with 9/11. Yes, they were associated with taking over Kuwait, but that just makes sense. Kuwait belongs to Iraq. Kuwait, people who live in Kuwait is a small piece of land that the British decided to give to one of the tribes that were living there. But Kuwait is actually choking Iraq. Iraq has only the real access of Iraq to warm waters is through Kuwait. You cannot suffocate 30, 40, 50 million Iraqis, big country of Iraq. You're suffocating Iraq by giving independence to a small shithole between Iraq and the warm waters of the Persian Gulf. As a country, in order for Iraq to, flourish, they need to have good open access to warm waters. And the nearest warm water to them is the Persian Gulf. Kuwait doesn't need to be a separate country, doesn't need to have a separate identity. They're all shitholes, shitty Arab tribes. Kuwait never had a separate identity. If you want to dig that deep and say every tribe around all the tribes have their own separate identity and should have their own country, well, you can find 1,000 Arab tribes in the Arabian Peninsula that have supposedly their own separate identity. You want to create another 1,000 countries around the Arabian Peninsula? For one thing, Saudi Arabia has two identities, a Shiite and a Sunni. Are the British ready to, recognize Saudi Arabia at least to be two countries? You're based on the British and the French way of dividing the world and giving independence to anywhere they wanted, drawing lines on the map. The Iraqis have been suffocating since the beginning by choking them off from the Persian Gulf, from warm waters, by putting Kuwait between Iraq and the Persian Gulf. That's just mean. That shouldn't be done. This is one of the oldest civilizations on earth. That shouldn't be acceptable. They have divided Kuwait from Iraq. They have put a block. They have blockaded Iraq from access to the Persian Gulf by recognizing Kuwait as independent and then befriending Kuwait. The British and the French befriended Kuwait. And now Uncle Sam's managers for the past 100 years. Befriending a small shithole like Kuwait, which is choking off Iraq from the warm waters. That's not hate speech, that's just facts. And as a civilization on this planet, as a planetary civilization, you want to make things, easy for the people on this planet. Acceptable, civilized. You don't choke off some of the oldest civilizations on earth. You don't try to choke them off. Iraq, Iran, all these embargoes. Venezuela is one of the oldest civilizations in South America. It was one of the first areas of South America to recognize itself and recognize its existence and declare independence. Venezuela. Cuba declared independent. It's not about socialism and communism, it's about independence. Cuba has an identity, is one of the oldest civilizations in Americas after the pink skins came over. So it's just declaring independence. They should not be punished because they want to be independent. Venezuela should not be punished because they want to be independent, which is the case. It's not about socialism. Socialism, yes, they care about their citizens. Socialism is basically caring about your society, caring about your citizens. They shouldn't be punished because they care about their citizens. They want their citizens to eat, and they want all their citizens to eat. That shouldn't be punished. Again, this is not hate speech. This is nuts. If you state certain facts about their planet and their human civilization, if you state those facts, that may be considered as hate speech. But if you actually go on the other side of the planet and kick some brown skin ass and the black skin ass and the red skin ass, that's perfectly fine. That's not hateful. But if you question it, that's hate speech. Amazing system you have put together. My friends at YouTube and my friends in the system and at the NSA and the FBI and the CIA, amazing system you have put together. Love you all. But folks, this is nuts. As intelligent creatures on this planet, you have to try to be a force for good. And the force for good, it doesn't work by just saying that we are the force for good. Your actions and the result of your actions shows whether you're force for good or not. And I'm not blaming the CIA for this. I noticed that in the last war in Iraq, the lady from the Valerie Plame, I think her name was. Apparently, the one member of CIA with balls was a woman named Valerie Plame, who stood up and, protested about the validity of the claims about Iraq and weapons of mass destruction and nuclear weapons. And she was outed and she was shut down and she had to quit her job. My friends at the CIA, if the only one in your organization who stands up to the system is a woman, then yeah, why don't you start hiring a lot more women in the CIA? Because apparently the women have got more balls than your men. What she did was basically, for those of you who don't know, she called out the administration of George W. Bush and said, basically, she saw where this fucking thing was going. It was going towards war, and she stood up and said, no fucking way. There was no fucking thing. There was no nuclear material ever shipped to Iraq, and it's all bullshit. And instead of the rest of CIA rising up with her, and honoring her and, standing up to the administration, everybody ran for cover. At least this is my understanding of what happened. So you have these intelligent people in intelligence work who suddenly a cowboy sits in the executive seat and the intelligent people just decide to, you know, go along with some stupid decisions based on, you know, lies. How is that possible? And only one in the organization stands up. And didn't she have a boss? Didn't she have co-workers who could stood up with them, and the rest of the co-workers and the rest of the organization stand up for them? So we wouldn't have 500,000 Iraqis from the oldest civilization on earth, one of the oldest civilizations on earth, be eliminated. And YouTube calls me out on hate speech and sends me a warning and says, we're gonna shut you down because you're talking. Hate speech? You want hate speech? Turn on Fox News, and it's perfectly legal, and nobody ever bothered them about the, you know, the kind of hate speech that they spread about the foreigners and about the brown people and about the black people and about the yellow people. Fox News and all these media, all these official media, nobody ever questions why you're spreading so much hate towards the yellow skins and the black skins and the brown skins and South Americans and the Asians and the Africans and this, and everybody is bad. All hate speech, all, you know, trying to stimulate, direct people's mind towards hating one group of people and loving another group of people. That's hate speech. Who determines these? Either they're all terrorists. If two factions are fighting, they're both trying to terrorize each other into submission. Either they're both terrorists or neither one is terrorist. End of story. Instead of stopping this fighting and resolving the issue by emphasizing that one side is good and the other side is bad, you're just perpetuating the situation. You're adding fuel to the fire by taking sides. The only way to stop the fight is not by not taking sides and sitting at the table and try to see how, you know, what sort of agreement can be reached that both sides are satisfied, that satisfies both sides, not fully, compromise halfway, by constantly telling one side that you're bad and you're good and you're bad and you're good and you're bad and you're good. These are terrorists. That's hate speech. Yeah, YouTube, you want hate speech? Turn on Fox News. Turn on Newsmax, turn on all these new AOL or LOA or whatever the fuck recently is trying to, you know, tell everybody how brown and black and red skins are bad people.